if you, as an officer, according to the training, you handcuff somebody behind the back, what's your responsibility with regard to that person from that moment on?
That person is yours. He's your responsibility. His safety is your responsibility. His well-being and is your responsibility.
That's Lieutenant Richard Zimmerman. He's the senior-most police officer in the Minneapolis Police Department, testifying today at the trial of Derek Chauvin. Brent Williams is a reporter for Minnesota Public Radio. He's been covering the trial. We've checked in with him several times about this case since it first unfolded. Mr. Williams, thanks for being with us tonight. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you again.
So I feel like as a layman watching this, just like a lot of people are watching this, I was surprised over the course of the week at the powerful and at times very emotional nature of the testimony. Today was a shorter day of testimony, one that I didn't expect to be as affecting. But hearing from these police officers, particularly Lieutenant Zimmerman today, it felt like a sledgehammer for the prosecution today. I have to ask you how you saw it in context and how effective you think these witnesses have been.
Well, I'll tell you, I wasn't necessarily surprised by Zimmerman's testimony. I've covered Lieutenant Zimmerman for many years. I've interviewed him for a couple different stories and seen him kind of how he interacts with the public. And here's an example. In 2014, there was a well-known Black activist who was basically, he accused officers of beating him up while they served a search warrant at his house. There was a public event held in which community leaders came out to show their support for this community leader. And Zimmerman was there, the only member of the police department to show up. And he basically said, hey, I'm sorry this happened to you. I hope you get justice. So Zimmerman's got a reputation for, as a lieutenant in homicide, and being that since 1995, he relies on having that kind of connection with community members. And so I've seen him kind of hold that position throughout the community. So that part of the testimony was not a surprise. But as you said, I think it was effective for the prosecution.
And the jury, looking at the scope of what's been offered here by the prosecution, obviously they're going to hear a powerful case from the defense team as well, I'm sure. But in terms of what we know about jurors' reactions to what they've been seeing, we've got pool reporters. Again, we can't all be there in the courtroom because of COVID restrictions. But what we hear from pool reporters about jurors taking copious notes, jurors seeming to be emotionally affected by some of the testimony. As the prosecution is going to yield to the defense, does it feel like they've sort of hit their marks, the things that they needed to get the jury to believe?
Well, it would appear so. Now, there was some of the other footage that we saw this week, of course, was that in-store footage from Cup Foods, watching George Floyd walking around, you know, just maybe an hour or so before he would no longer be with us. And the pool reporter that day noticed how the jurors were paying attention and looking at George Floyd making these movements. I mean, you could see him kind of wiggling about, and as the clerk said, he appeared that he was high, but was a friendly person and was pleasant to talk to. So I think it's those types of moments that I see have had an impact on jurors. They seem to be paying attention to seeing George Floyd as a living person before, obviously, what we saw in those videos of him taking his last breaths.
Brent Williams, reporter for Minnesota Public Radio. We know that the trial continues. It has actually really transfixed the country in a lot of ways, but it's really helpful to have your reporting in your context. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Good to be here.